ThreatTraq Essentials, we're going to take a look this week at some everyday cybersecurity lessons that we can learn from this week's ThreatTraq stories. I'm here with Matt Kaiser. How you doing, Matt?
Doing all right, Don. How about yourself?
Doing great. We had some interesting stories this week. They may not be the kind of things that the average internet user will run across every day, but they're interesting nonetheless. Let's talk about the one you brought to us, which was about some networks that suddenly came alive again. Tell me about that.
Sure. So there's an organization called Spam House. They kind of keep an eye on fraud and abuse on the internet. And this past week, they noticed that some 52 networks that were previously not being used were suddenly alive, and traffic was being routed for them, which isn't something that happens a lot. Usually things sort of go, one, two at a time. This seemed to sort of be coordinated. Um, so typically when this sort of stuff happens, when a whole bunch of weird looking networks show up in space that's not supposed to be used, it's eventually going to be used for fraud. So Spam House took action to notify the folks that were sort of enabling that traffic to hit the rest of the internet and said, you should take some action against this. And as of December 1st, a bunch of those companies have sort of decided not to route traffic, which basically means those networks aren't going to be functional on the internet. So that's a good thing.
So many of us can't control things like that on the internet, but we may encounter frauds and scams like this. So what kind of advice do we want to give people about this?
I want to say that in this case, it was because it was coordinated behavior and very much out of the ordinary that Spam House noticed it and took action against it. I would say that this is not a bad idea in your own life to keep an eye out for things that sort of stick out. Behavior that doesn't seem authentic or seems like it's way out of the ordinary may be something spending a little more time on to understand, because there may be something shady going on there.
Speaking of which, Manish brought us a story about, well, it's the kind of thing you see in movies a lot. When there's a bank robbery, the bank robbers will just say, blow up a bomb or start a fire across town to divert people while they're really doing something else. Mm-hmm. And this was a story about something similar to that. Tell me about it.
So this is a nation state actor that was sort of caught in a number of networks. It seems their modus operandi is to get into the network using phishing. And then once they're on a box, install a bunch of crypto mining software to mine Monero, which is another non-Bitcoin, but definitely one of the major cryptocurrencies. And at the same time, they would also pursue the usual attacker behavior of trying to escalate privileges and poke around and do more espionage-focused stuff. It seems a little counterintuitive that they would do something as noisy as running crypto miners on a box, but it seems to me and to the folks on the show that this distraction is sort of a way of shutting down the analyst's line of thinking. So if you find a box that has a problem on it, your antivirus may tell you it's got crypto miner, and you may be satisfied with that as the scenario of what you've encountered. And then once you've removed the crypto miner, you call it a day, sort of moving on to the next thing. So in this case, that's like, I think what they were trying to do is to give you an explanation for why things are weird on your network. Once you've dealt with that, you sort of move on to the next thing, and these guys sort of continue their job without you poking too much more into it. So it's more of a psychological trick than it is a technical attack, but it is fascinating to talk about why that might work.
But all of us may encounter some form of a psychological attack when we're online in the way of social engineering, right?
Sure. I think this plays more into cognitive biases and sort of mental blind spots. And it's good to reassess the way that you think about things and maybe not be satisfied with taking any of the shortcuts you might take if you're under pressure or a time crunch.
So Ganesh brought us a story about researchers found a flaw, I guess, in DNS. Would that be correct?
That would be correct.
And that is a major part of the infrastructure of the internet. So tell me about why this was so dangerous.
This is dangerous because it allows attackers to tamper with the results that come back when your computer asks, what is company.com or a.com, b.com. Once that sort of lookup is done, your computer sort of trusts the IP address from there on out in terms of like, this is the site I'm trying to talk to because my DNS server gave me the answer and I trust my DNS server, right? If you're an attacker and you want to get in the middle of something, in a man-in-the-middle attack, this is a very valuable way to get somebody's traffic that's not supposed to be destined to you to come to your machine. And this is something you can do, what we say is out of band. So you don't have to be in the victim's box. You don't have to be, compromising DNS servers. You just have to do some interesting, what we call side channel attacks and infer some valuable information in order to pull off this poisoning attack.
Well, what does that mean to all of us, and how do we stay safe? What do we learn from this?
This is really something that folks who operate DNS servers or manage the code for modern operating systems have to deal with for us, honestly. I mean, this is something that is really a problem that has to be dealt with at that level. I'm not sure what you could really do as a victim to tell the difference. One thing you might do is if you happen to be interacting with a service that uses SSL, some browsers will look at the certificate presented by a site and do something called certificate pinning, where the first time you visited the site, it sort of held onto the certificate and said, this is the one that I expect to see. And anything else that shows up, I should throw an alert. If suddenly the sites that you've been trusting are showing SSL errors saying that the certificate is not valid for the site, don't just click through and say, I know what I'm doing. Really look at it and see if maybe this sort of attack is going on, and in which case don't trust the servers that you're trying to talk to.
Thanks for all that great advice, Matt. Once again, this shows that the threat landscape is always changing, and we always have to be alert to that. Thank you all for watching, and if you want to keep up with great advice like this, please like or subscribe below. And if you want to take a deeper dive into these stories, click on the playlist below. We'll see you next time.